She moved to a remote farmhouse to start over as a single mom. Just her daughter, a loyal dog, and a quiet piece of land. But everything changed when her dog uncovered a hidden cave on the property. What this single mom found inside the cave would uncover a dark secret buried for decades and turn her peaceful retreat into a fight for survival. But before we dive in, tell us, where are you watching from? We love seeing our global family in the comments. Let's get started. The early morning light spilled softly over the rolling hills of Wyoming, casting a golden hue across the frost-kissed grass. In a modest farmhouse nestled at the base of Wind Creek Ridge, Amelia Harper, a 36-year-old single mother, stood by the window with a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The land stretched out endlessly around her, vast, untamed, and whispering with secrets. Amelia had inherited this land from her late grandfather, a man as quiet and rugged as the mountains themselves. After the pain of a messy divorce and the loss of her job in Denver, she packed up her daughter, Layla, and moved to the old farmhouse, hoping the silence could heal what the city had broken. Her face was gentle, marked by sleepless nights but illuminated by resilience. Her auburn hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her flannel shirt still smelled faintly of pine from yesterday's hike. By her side was Max, her loyal golden retriever, who had been with her through every storm, literal and emotional. He never left her side. She believed this land offered nothing more than peace, but beneath its soil, something ancient waited. It had become part of Amelia's new routine: morning coffee, homeschooling Layla, and long afternoon hikes with Max. It was on one of those crisp October afternoons, when the sky was brushed with strokes of lavender and burnt orange, that everything began to change. Layla had been feeling under the weather that day, so Amelia decided to take Max out for a quick hike alone. The old trail behind the barn led toward Wind Creek Ridge, winding up through a dense grove of cottonwoods and pines. Amelia loved the sound of the leaves crunching beneath her boots, the way the world felt silent except for the wind whispering through the trees. Max trotted ahead, his tail wagging with every step. He'd grown particularly energetic that day, sniffing at the air with unusual alertness. Amelia chuckled. "What is it?" "Boy, you smell a raccoon again." But Max wasn't acting playful. He stopped abruptly, ears perked, nose to the ground. Then, without warning, he veered off the trail and disappeared into a thick patch of underbrush. "Max," she called, pushing through the thorns and branches. "Come back." The underbrush gave way to something unexpected, a narrow, sunken hollow in the earth, half covered by vines and crumbling stones. Max was already there, pawing at the base of a moss-covered rock wall. Amelia knelt beside him, brushing away debris with her gloved hands. What she saw made her breath hitch. There, almost perfectly hidden behind a curtain of ivy, was a jagged opening in the rock. A cave. Not a shallow alcove like the ones she remembered from childhood, but a true, pitch-black passage descending into the earth. Her first instinct was to walk away, to pretend she hadn't seen it. This was the kind of thing you read about in mystery novels, not real life. But Max stood at the entrance, tail still, ears forward, like he was guarding something sacred. Curiosity overrode caution. She jogged back to the house, grabbed a flashlight, and scribbled a quick note for Layla, just in case. Back at the entrance, Amelia hesitated. The air spilling from the opening was cold and musty, carrying a smell of damp stone and something older, something she couldn't quite name. She turned on the flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, revealing slick rock walls and a narrow dirt floor. "All right, Max," she whispered, her voice shaking. Let's see what you found. She squeezed through the opening, flashlight in one hand, Max close behind her. The tunnel was tight at first, forcing her to crouch. The silence inside was thick, broken only by the sound of her boots scuffing against the ground and Max's soft panting. After a few feet, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber, a natural room hidden deep within the ridge. Amelia's flashlight swept over the walls. There were markings, symbols carved into the stone, circles, lines, spirals, nothing she recognized, but they had a rhythm to them, a purpose. Her breath fogged in front of her face. The air was cooler here, almost chilled. Max padded forward, nose to the ground, and then stopped at a pile of rocks at the far end of the chamber. He let out a low whine. Amelia joined him, brushing away loose stones and dirt. Her hand hit something solid metal. She scraped away more debris, revealing a rusted old tin box, the kind used for tools or keepsakes. She opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside were bundles of folded paper, yellowed with age. Some were maps, drawn in meticulous detail. Others were letters handwritten and faded, with ink smudged by time. The first letter she opened was addressed to someone named Jameson. The writing was elegant but urgent. If you're reading this, then you've found the cave, and you need to know the truth about Wind Creek. The letter went on to describe a secret, an old family agreement, a buried truth about the land they now stood on. Something about stolen deeds, corruption, a cover-up that had stretched across 3 generations. Her heart raced as she read. Amelia stumbled back, trying to process what she was holding. It wasn't treasure. It wasn't gold or artifacts. It was evidence. Max nuzzled her hand gently. She looked at him, stunned. Max, this isn't just some cave. It hit her like a wave, this land, her land, held more than memories and trees. It held a story, one that someone had tried very hard to bury. The final page of the letter held a name, one she recognized. Victor Langston, her grandfather's old neighbor, a man now sitting on the county council, the very man who had tried to buy the property from her a few months earlier, pressuring her to sell at half the value. She had declined, and he hadn't taken it kindly. Amelia's hands shook as she folded the papers and placed them back into the box. She felt cold all over, not from the cave, but from the truth settling in her bones. Victor had known. That's why he wanted the land. That's why he had visited twice in the last year, each time more persistent, each time more forceful. She looked down at Max, who was still watching her silently, as if waiting for her to understand the full weight of what she'd just uncovered. This cave wasn't just a hidden chamber. It was a secret buried in the earth, a truth someone would do anything to keep hidden. She took one last look at the cave walls, at the markings etched into stone, at the sealed history that had been left here for someone brave enough to find. Amelia wasn't sure what came next. But one thing was certain. Her life and her daughter's had just changed forever. Amelia didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table long after Layla had gone to bed. The tin box open in front of her, its yellowed papers spread out beneath the soft glow of the overhead lamp. Max lay at her feet, ever loyal. His breathing slow and steady, the only calming sound in a room thick with unease. Her fingers traced the handwriting again. Every word felt heavier now. The truth was in her hands, evidence of land theft, falsified deeds, letters between men who were long dead and men who now held powerful positions in the county. It wasn't just history, it was present, and it was dangerous. Around midnight, a truck passed slowly down the gravel road outside her property. Her house was far from the main road, and visitors were rare. The truck didn't stop. but she saw the headlights sweep across the front porch, pausing just a moment too long. She turned off the lamp and moved into the shadows, watching. Max lifted his head, ears perked, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Shh, boy," she whispered, her heart pounding. "We're okay." But she knew they weren't. The next morning, Amelia drove into town. She tucked the papers into a thick manila envelope, sealed it, and placed it inside her tote bag right between Layla's math book and a pack of crackers. If anyone asked, she was just a mom running errands and homeschooling her kid. She parked outside the Sweet Hollow County Records office, a squat, red brick building with ivy creeping up the side. Layla stayed in the truck with Max while Amelia stepped inside, clutching the envelope like it might vanish if she let go. The receptionist, a polite but distracted woman named Diane, glanced up from her crossword. "Morning. Need help with property records?" Amelia hesitated. "Yes. Actually, I was hoping to speak with Mr. Vance, the county clerk." Diane raised an eyebrow. "He's not in today. Something about a council meeting. Can I help?" Amelia's throat tightened. She didn't know how to answer. Something about this whole situation didn't feel safe anymore. She forced a smile. "No worries. I'll come back later," as she turned to leave. A man across the room. Tall, suited, too well dressed for a Monday in Sweet Hollow, stood and gave her a polite nod. He'd been pretending to read a pamphlet about land conservation, but she saw it now he wasn't reading. He'd been watching her. Amelia's gut twisted. She hurried out of the building. "Back at the truck!" Max barked once, sharply, the moment she opened the door. She slid into the driver's seat, adrenaline rising. "Something's not right. Max," she whispered. "Someone knows." That night, she called her grandfather's old friend, Mr. Elliot Granger, a retired judge who now spent his days tending bees and writing op-eds in the local paper. He'd always told Amelia, if the past comes knocking, don't let it in without a lawyer. When she told him what she found, the cave, the letters, the name Victor Langston, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Amelia, I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not trust anyone on the council. Do not go to the sheriff. And whatever you do, don't let Victor Langston know you've read those letters." "I think he already does," she whispered. "You're not safe out there. Not anymore." The next day, she returned to the cave. This time with gloves, a plastic file folder, and a better flashlight. Max followed her closely, more serious than usual. She carefully documented everything, taking photos of the markings on the wall, photographing each letter, scanning the maps with her phone. Then she noticed something new. In the back corner of the chamber, where the wall met the floor, her flashlight revealed a faint glimmer like metal. She brushed away the dust and pulled free a small leather pouch, bound tight with string. Inside a USB flash drive, no label, no writing. Her hands shook as she held it up. Whoever had hidden this knew paper might not survive time. They'd left something modern, something they wanted found. She returned home and plugged it into an old laptop she rarely used, one that had no internet connection, just in case. Inside were 2 folders, audio and docs. She opened the docs folder first. PDFs, scanned documents, land sale contracts, notary stamps, county signatures, all doctored, all forged. Next, the audio folder. She clicked the first file. Static. Then voices. She doesn't know. The deed transfer was done through Langston's man. She'll never see it coming. What if she fights it? Then we do what we did last time. You remember what happened to Evan, don't you? Amelia froze. Evan Monroe had been a local farmer who went missing 3 years ago. No one ever found his truck. No one ever found him. She couldn't breathe. That night, just after Max began barking wildly. Amelia jolted awake, grabbed the flashlight and ran to the front door. Through the window, she saw them, two figures, walking around the property. One carried a crowbar. The other had something slung over his shoulder. She didn't wait. She grabbed the tin box, the flash drive, and the envelope of evidence. Woke Layla gently and whispered, "Sweetheart, we're going on a little trip. Okay, be very quiet. Don't turn on the lights." Layla, half asleep, nodded. Max led the way. They slipped out the back and into the forest, disappearing into the dark, into the land that, for generations, had been both their sanctuary and their secret. Amelia didn't know where they would go yet, but she had the truth. She had her daughter. She had Max. And she had a fire in her heart that had finally been lit. The forest was a different world at night, a hushed cathedral of shadows and secrets. Amelia held Layla close as they moved deeper into the trees, her boots crunching softly against fallen leaves. Max trotting ahead like a sentinel. The beam of her flashlight danced over mossy trunks and twisted roots, but she kept it pointed low, afraid someone might see the light from the road. She had no plan, no destination, only one instinct getaway. The truck had been their lifeline, but it was too loud, too visible. Whoever those men were, they had waited for darkness to strike. They knew where she lived. They probably knew her routines. That changed tonight. They hiked for nearly an hour before Amelia finally allowed herself to stop. Max led them to a small clearing just above the creek, sheltered by boulders and tangled pine. She remembered this spot from childhood. Her grandfather used to bring her here to watch the deer. Now it was her only safe haven. She spread out an emergency blanket, tucked Layla in close, and wrapped her own jacket around both of them. Max curled up beside them, his head on Amelia's lap, alert even in rest. Layla's small voice finally broke the silence. "Are we hiding?" Amelia hesitated, then answered honestly, "Yes, baby. But just for a little while. We'll be okay." There was a long pause. "Is it because of the cave?" Amelia looked down. Layla's wide, trusting eyes were searching hers. The question hit hard, not because it was unexpected, but because her daughter had put the pieces together faster than most adults would have. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I found something important, something someone doesn't want us to have. But we're not giving it up." A flicker of pride, of defiance, entered her voice. "I promise you, I'll keep you safe, no matter what." The following morning, the forest was damp with fog. Amelia's clothes clung to her, chilled by dew and a long night of unrest. Her muscles ached. Her stomach growled, but her mind was sharp. They couldn't survive like this for long. She pulled out her phone, no signal. Of course, but she wasn't trying to call. She pulled up a saved contact. Eleanor Wyatt. Eleanor had been her college roommate years ago, now an investigative journalist for a small but fiercely independent paper in Cheyenne. They hadn't spoken in over a year. But if anyone knew what to do with evidence like this, it was Eleanor. Amelia typed quickly, her fingers shaking. "Urgent. I have documents audio proving land fraud and possibly murder tied to Sweet Hollow County officials. Can't explain now. Need help? Trust no one local? Text only? She hit send, praying Eleanor still had the same number. It delivered. Then 3 dots. Then, "Where are you?" By the time they reached Eleanor's cabin 2 hours north, Amelia was running on fumes. Layla had dozed in the back seat of Eleanor's beat-up Subaru, Max resting his head on her lap. The moment the car stopped, Amelia nearly collapsed. Eleanor helped her inside, eyes scanning the tree line even as she welcomed them in. I thought you were exaggerating, Eleanor said softly. Then I read the letter you sent. Amelia pulled the tin box, the flash drive, and her file of notes onto the table. I'm not just in danger. Elle, I think I've uncovered why people have gone missing in our county for years, and now they know I have it. Eleanor didn't blink. Then we do what journalists are meant to do. We expose it. That night, as Layla slept upstairs and Max snored at the fireplace, Amelia sat with Eleanor over coffee and fear. I didn't come to that cave looking for answers, Amelia said. I came here to heal, to hide from life after everything fell apart. You're not hiding anymore, Eleanor replied. You're fighting, and you're not alone. Amelia looked into the flames of the fireplace and realized this wasn't just about land anymore, or property, or even survival. This was about taking her power back. All her life, she'd let others tell her what she was capable of. Her ex-husband, her old boss, the county officials who talked down to her, even the part of herself that whispered, "You're just a single mom. No one listens to women like you." But now, she had the truth. She had evidence that could shake the very ground Sweet Hollow was built on, and for the first time in years, she wasn't running anymore. She was choosing to fight. The next morning, Eleanor handed her a burner phone and a laptop. You're going to write a statement. First person, your story, from your voice. Then I'll embed the audio and docs and release it anonymously. No names, no faces, just the truth. Amelia hesitated. But they'll know. Langston's people, they'll know it's me. They already do. But once it's out in the open, they can't hide anymore. They'll lose their power the moment people start asking questions. Amelia took a deep breath and began to type. I'm not a politician, or a lawyer, or a journalist. I'm just a mom. But I found something in a cave on my land. Something someone buried, hoping no one would ever find it again. Her voice grew stronger with each sentence. Her hands stopped shaking. And when she was done, she looked at Eleanor, and for the first time in days, smiled. I think I'm ready. The article went live at exactly 7:03 Osemamsam. Eleanor published it under the headline A Single Mother, a Cave, and the Secret They Tried to Bury Forever. Within minutes, Amelia's phone began buzzing uncontrollably. Messages, emails, comments all pouring in from strangers. Strangers who had read the article, listened to the audio of Langston and his associates talking about clearing the land, about handling the curious, and making sure no one's left to talk. And then, it spread. It really spread. A freelance journalist retweeted the article. Then came a corruption watchdog blog out of Texas. A Denver radio station picked it up before noon, in less than 6 hours. Amelia's story had broken out of Sweet Hollow's borders, and those who had once been silent started speaking up. A 72-year-old woman named June Palmer commented under the post. Langston threatened me into selling my parents' farm for 1/10 of its value. Said if I didn't sign, my livestock barn might catch fire one pretty night. 3 weeks later, it did. Another message read, I used to work in the deeds office. I saw papers being altered. I stayed quiet. I can't anymore. By midday, a black vehicle pulled up outside Eleanor's cabin. Both Amelia and Eleanor froze as the engine shut off. Max began to growl, low and steady. Eleanor peeked through the curtain. No plates, she whispered. They're here. Before they could run, Eleanor's phone rang. A calm, clear woman's voice. Don't come outside. My name is Deputy Hannah Reyes from Bridger County Sheriff's Office. I don't work for Sweet Hollow. And I believe what you published. Amelia's breath caught. Do you have proof? I do, Reyes said. And I want to help you bring them down. Deputy Reyes revealed that she had once lived in Sweet Hollow, but left after watching her own brother, an honest officer, pushed out for investigating Langston. She'd kept everything to herself, until she read the article. I have friends at the state level, Reyes continued. If we hand over the evidence to them, the investigation can't be buried. But we need something more, something public, something big, so that national media can't ignore it. Amelia felt Max's breath rise and fall against her leg. Deep inside, she knew this was the moment. Not just to protect herself or Layla, but to end something that had gone unchecked for generations. The plan came together faster than she expected. Sweet Hollow was scheduled to hold its fall festival that Saturday, the town's biggest annual event. Langston, as usual, was the main sponsor. He'd be giving a speech, center stage, in front of the whole town. Giant projection screens, local news coverage, families everywhere. Eleanor grinned. Then we just need to change what those screens are showing. Reyes nodded. And I'll have a warrant ready to arrest him on stage, if we play this right. Amelia had never been one for stages. She hated crowds. But this time, she didn't hide. On the day of the festival, she pulled on her grandfather's old beanie and walked into the fairgrounds like any other local mom. Layla stayed safe at Eleanor's cabin under protection from 2 Bridger deputies. Max walked calmly at her side, leashed but alert, his eyes never resting on one face for too long. Langston took the stage, his smile bright as ever. He waved to the crowd like a conquering hero. Then he began his usual polished speech about small-town values and community pride. Behind the scenes, Eleanor sat in the sound tent with a laptop and a single button. The big screens flickered. Langston's face vanished. Crystal clear audio began to play. If she won't sign, handle it. Like Evan. Bury it. Leave no trace. The entire square fell silent. Murmurs, then shouting, then fury. Langston's face drained of color. He stumbled over his words. This is fake. Who let this play? Deputy Reyes emerged from the side of the stage. Victor Langston, she announced, her voice unwavering. You are under arrest for conspiracy, land fraud, and attempted murder. She snapped handcuffs on his wrists, loud and clear for all to hear. In the crowd, Amelia stood still. She didn't cheer, she didn't smile. She just breathed deeply, finally. After years of fear, of second-guessing, of being told she was just a mom, she had made a choice. She had chosen truth. A mother, a loyal dog, a forgotten cave, and a secret too heavy to stay buried. After the festival, Amelia's world was never the same. Victor Langston was denied bail and remained in custody. Major media outlets from Denver to New York were now chasing the story of the single mother and the cave that changed everything. TV crews came knocking on her cabin door. Reporters called non-stop, all wanting to retell her extraordinary journey. But Amelia stayed away from it all. She hadn't done it for the praise. She wasn't a hero. She was just a mother who had finally decided to stop being silent. The first month after Langston's arrest was an emotional recovery more than anything. Amelia returned to the wooden farmhouse after being assured it was safe again. There had been a time she thought she'd never go back, not after the home was violated, not after running barefoot into the dark. But this time, it felt different. Just like her, she started over with the smallest things, repainting the porch, replanting the vegetable garden, reading bedtime stories to Layla without the constant fear of someone watching from the woods. One rainy afternoon, while Layla was coloring in the living room, Amelia stood on the back porch, gazing toward the forest, the same forest where Max had first led her to the cave. The cave was now sealed, protected as part of an active investigation. But in her heart, it remained the place where everything changed, not just where she uncovered Langston's lies, but where she rediscovered herself. She remembered how her hands had trembled when she first stepped inside that darkness, how her heart had pounded. She'd thought she was making a mistake, that she wasn't strong enough to face whatever was waiting beneath the earth. But she had gone in, and she had never come out the same. Weeks later, Eleanor returned with a special gift, a printed front-page copy of the article that had shaken the entire state. "Silence ends with one brave voice," the headline read boldly across the page. Amelia turned it over and saw a photo of herself and Layla, hand in hand on the porch, Max lying at their feet. She smiled, then teared up. "You wrote it perfectly," she whispered. "But it wasn't just one voice. We did it together." Eleanor smiled back. No one should ever have to face the dark alone. Then came a new kind of opportunity this time, not from fear, but from purpose. A local high school invited Amelia to speak to their students. At first, she declined. The thought of standing in front of a crowd still made her stomach tighten. But Layla, eyes bright with pride, said, "I think other people need to hear you talk, too, just like you talk to me." So she said yes. The talk was held in the school library, no cameras, no media, just 30 quiet students and a few teachers, listening to a woman who wasn't a public speaker, but was someone real, whose heart had broken and slowly been rebuilt. "You might think you're small," Amelia told them, her voice slightly shaky but strong, "and that someone else will always be the one to take action. But sometimes, it's the most ordinary people who change everything. Don't let anyone convince you that you don't have a voice." After the talk, a student approached her with tears in her eyes. She whispered, "My family's being pressured to sell our land. I never told anyone, until today." Amelia hugged her, and she knew. Then and there, her journey wasn't over. It was simply changing shape. She began writing not a book, not a memoir, but community resources. How to report fraud, how to protect property, how Max, her brave companion, helped uncover a decades-old crime. People called her courageous, but the truth, she was still afraid when opening the mailbox, still tensed when a strange car parked near her land. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. And Max, that quiet hero, was now a feature in local school textbooks, the first civilian dog to uncover a land fraud crime in Wyoming. Layla drew him in every picture. She nicknamed him Guardian of the Ridge. One peaceful evening, as snow began to fall gently outside the window, Layla curled up beside her mother and asked, "Mom, what if we never found the cave? What if Max didn't lead us there?" Amelia pulled her daughter close. "Then I still would have found a way," she whispered, "because I was never walking alone." She looked at Max, asleep in front of the fireplace, the dog who had stood between her and danger more times than she could count. One woman, one loyal dog, one journey that seemed small but turned out powerful enough to change an entire town. 3 months had passed. Winter had swept across Wyoming like a blanket of silence. The farmhouse sat quiet under soft snowdrifts, smoke curling lazily from the chimney, and frost tracing delicate lines across the windows. The world outside seemed frozen in time, but inside, something had thawed. Amelia stood at the kitchen window, holding a warm mug of coffee, watching Max patrol the edge of the property. Layla sat at the table behind her, carefully gluing dried flowers onto the pages of a homemade scrapbook. Life, after all the fear, all the chaos, had become still again. But it wasn't the same kind of stillness as before. This was peace. On the first Saturday of February, the town of Sweet Hollow gathered in the town square. There was no parade, no music, no food trucks. Instead, there was a quiet crowd wrapped in coats and scarves, huddled together under gray skies and falling snow. They weren't there for celebration. They were there for truth. A new memorial had been installed just outside the courthouse, a simple granite stone with a bronze plaque. To those who spoke when silence was expected. To those who stood when no one else would. And beneath it, a single name. Evan Monroe, the man who had vanished years ago, buried in secrecy and lies. The one Amelia had never known, but whose story had led to her own. Sheriff Donovan, now leading the regional task force investigating land fraud, spoke solemnly. "Today, we remember not just Evan," he said, "but every voice that was silenced before it had the chance to speak. Thanks to one woman's courage and the loyalty of a very special dog, those voices have found their way back into the light." Amelia stood at the front of the crowd with Layla holding her hand, Max sitting quietly between them. She wasn't used to attention, the dozens of eyes, the reporters standing respectfully in the back, but for once, she didn't flinch. She didn't shrink, because this wasn't about her. This was about what one act of bravery, one choice to step forward could do for an entire community. After the ceremony, strangers approached her, not for interviews, but to thank her. A man with weathered hands said, "You gave people like me permission to stop being afraid." A woman whispered, "You reminded me that one person can matter." And in those moments, Amelia realized something deeper than she'd ever expected. It had never been about exposing Langston. It had been about restoring faith. Back at home, that night, Amelia sat by the fire. Max curled at her feet. Layla curled at her side. She pulled out a small notebook. Inside were pages of scribbles, thoughts, lessons, all the things she'd learned since finding the cave. She'd never thought of herself as a writer, but the first line she wrote felt like it had always been waiting inside her. "The strongest people I've ever met were never loud about it." She wasn't loud either, but she was strong. A week later, she received a letter in the mail, an invitation. "We are launching a statewide program to educate and protect rural landowners from fraud and coercion. We'd be honored to have you speak at our kickoff event." Amelia held the letter for a long time. This wasn't a reporter looking for a headline. This was an opportunity, a chance to turn her pain into something that could help others. And this time, she said yes. The event was held in a small hall in Casper. It wasn't glamorous, just folding chairs, coffee and paper cups, and a room full of ranchers, farmers, and single parents. People who had built their lives on land passed down through generations. People who had been told, like her, that their voices didn't matter. Amelia stepped up to the podium with Max by her side. She took a deep breath and spoke plainly. "I used to think strength meant being silent, pushing through, pretending I didn't need help. But real strength, it's knowing when to speak. It's asking questions no one wants answered. It's holding on to the truth when the world tries to bury it. And sometimes, it's following your dog into the dark and refusing to be afraid. Laughter, then silence, then applause. Not loud, but real." After the event, a man waited quietly by the exit. He looked tired, the kind of tired that lives deep in the bones. He introduced himself as a retired miner. "I know what's under the land," he said, "but I never thought I'd have to fight to keep it." He handed Amelia a folded piece of paper. "My grandfather kept this. I never knew what to do with it. But after hearing you, maybe it's time." Inside was an old survey map. Another trail, another story, and maybe another truth waiting to be told. That night, Amelia stood on the porch of the cabin, looking out over the snow-covered hills. Layla was asleep. Max sat beside her, ears perked toward the dark tree line. She thought about everything that had happened: the cave, the fear, the evidence, the truth, the fire that had almost broken her but ended up forging her into someone new. "I was never meant to stay hidden," she whispered. The stars blinked quietly overhead. "I thought this land would protect me, but maybe it needed me to protect it." Max pressed his head against her knee, as if he understood every word. One mother, one dog, one impossible moment that changed the course of a town forever. And somewhere deep in the ground, in a hidden chamber no one would have ever found on purpose, it all began with a paw print in the dirt. Amelia thought she had lost everything: her job, her marriage, her sense of control. She ran to the mountains to escape, to become invisible. But in the most unexpected way, through a cave buried beneath generations of silence, she found her strength. She learned that even the quietest voices can shake the ground when they speak the truth. The lesson isn't about being brave without fear. It's about being brave through fear. The cave didn't just hold secrets. It held the mirror she needed to remember who she was. Because in the end, courage doesn't always look like a soldier or a superhero. Sometimes, it looks like a mother with shaking hands, choosing to do the right thing anyway. The end. Up next, 2 more true inspired stories of courage and resilience. Click now to keep watching. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some secrets are meant to be uncovered.